Take six, take six, take six. Welcome. Golly. Seven, this is take seven, this is take seven. This is just another intro. Welcome back to the Musty Fly channel. I'm Peter Black, and you are watching another episode of Confessions of a Content Creator. Today, hopefully, I will give you a couple of things that I wish I knew before I started podcast. So I'm gonna do this one more time. Welcome back to the Musty Fly channel. I'm Peter Black. You are watching another episode of Confessions of a Content Creator. Today I'm going to, hopefully, within a short amount of time, discuss a couple of things that I wish I would have known about podcasting before I got started. They're going to center around two things. The first thing is, as a podcaster, how you get paid. Now, what I will say is I did a little research prior to starting a podcast, but just because of who I am, just because of who Peter Black is, as opposed to me doing a whole lot of research and spending a whole lot of time, I just kind of jumped right in. But what I found out is as far as I know, there is not a paid partnership program for people who have podcasts. So the way you get paid is not necessarily per download, but you get paid by advertisers who will advertise within the episode, or you get paid by a sponsor, or you can actually, I guess I would never do this, but you could actually get somebody to pay to come on your podcast. And so I don't want to say that those are the only three ways of getting paid, but it's not the same way as having a YouTube channel, where YouTube channels, you get paid per click, per minute, per views. That is not the way it works for podcast. Also, if you are familiar with the Spotify structure or the iTunes structure or the streaming platform structure, what you have is, if you are a musician, you get paid some type of public performance right if your music is streamed on either one of those platforms, or actually on any platform, you get paid. That is not the way it happens on the podcast. And for me, I was a little bit, I guess maybe a little bit discouraged when I found that out, because also through interviewing some other podcasters, what I discovered is that you're not going to have an advertiser probably until about, maybe consistently, and you have 500 to 1,000 downloads. And even when I'm talking about those small numbers, what we see is that you're probably going to have local advertisement or someone very small. And again, I don't know what value or what you can charge for that, but that's at the point where you're going to start creeping into the pond or into the waters of being able to charge someone for being in your space. So that was a little bit discouraging, and I don't know. I don't really know how I felt about that, but I've gotten over that hurdle. But I really wish I would have known that prior to starting my podcast. Now, the second thing is that you really have to get involved in other avenues in order for your podcast to take off. And maybe avenues might be the wrong word, but you actually have to really participate in other spaces in order for your podcast to take off. So you really have to be active on social media, right? And that sucks for me because I'm not a social media individual. Not that I think that social media is a bad place, but it's just not necessarily a place for me. I kind of dabble in it, and I'm in it more so now because of the Musty Fly podcast. But the reason why I say you have to be active on social media is because that's the only way people are going to know what you're doing and what you're providing to the world, is to have a social media platform. Another space you're going to want to be involved in is you're going to want to be involved in things offline, right? Like, so you're going to want to join certain clubs, you're going to want to join certain meetup groups, and that is going to help grow your podcast audience. I guess something else that kind of struck me as a bit raw with podcasting is the fact that There's not a whole lot of places where you can go for resources and get help. I joined a couple of Facebook groups, but it didn't work for me. And the reason why I believe they didn't work for me is because it was a bunch of podcasters. And I think, and what I will say is that I don't think podcasters are listening to other podcasts, with the exception of some of the huge or big podcasters. Like people might be listening to Joe Rogan. People might be listening to Ben Shapiro or NBC. You might be listening to those kind of things, but you're not necessarily listening to Peter Black. Right. So I guess I kind of equate this to the same thing as if you got, I don't know, if you have a dentist who starts his own practice and then he's in the building with a bunch of other dentists. Those other dentists are not using each other's services. They're not referring people to you. Right. So what you're going to, not you, but I guess people who have started a podcast, you've really got to think of other ways to get your creativity or your podcast episode outside of that into other markets other than just podcasters. And I see it all the time. I mean, there are like a gazillion groups on Facebook offering for podcast collabs. I mean, there's so many different names, but I just don't think that they work. You might have a difference of opinion. You can push back. You can let me know in the comments on whether or not you think the podcast groups help. Also, too, there are also Facebook groups and websites that actually will charge you a fee to find guests. That sucks. I don't want that. I'm not paying $9.99 for anybody to find me a guest. The way that I would recommend finding guests is social media. There are plenty of people on Twitter. There are plenty of people on Instagram who will be a guest on your podcast. And that's a great segue, because what else I'll say about a podcast is I think it really does better if you have a guest or if you have guests. Just one individual talking head. I'm getting tired of holding this microphone right now. So I know that you listening to one person rant about a television show or about a movie or whatever, that can get very monotonous. That can get very boring. So it's best to get guests. And that's something else I wish I would have known prior to starting my podcast. Reason being is, again, I'm not that social. So going out to meet other people is a chore, or it's a little bit of a task. Although I'm kind of clearing that hurdle, it's still somewhat of a muddy feeling for me going out to get guests. Because to be honest, not everybody says yes. Although I think that you would want to be on my podcast, there are a bunch of people who tell me no. Lastly, what I will say is that I didn't know about having a podcast, that I kind of thought would be different, is I thought that I would just record, push play, and that would be it. But this thing, in order for this thing to grow, you have to put in a lot of work. You have to put in a lot of work on yourself. You have to put a lot of work in on the concepts and ideas. And you also have to put in a lot of work on marketing and getting better at being a podcast individual. So that's it. You've made it to the end. I appreciate your 7 minutes, 8 minutes, however long this video is. I'm going to ask you to continue to support creators. We need it. We love you. You love us. Until next time, keep living life, love yourself, and keep supporting creators.